Our next session dives into what it takes to drive continuous improvement in a highly regulated environment and how embracing a composable approach can make that transformation sustainable. So we'll hear from Daniel Barker, the Group IT Director, and Amandio Gomez, Enterprise Architect at Avon Technologies. And moderating today's fireside chat is Eric Morandet, Chief Business Officer at Tulip. So please join me in welcoming Daniel, Amandio, and Eric to the stage.
Hey guys, thanks for joining.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, pleasure. I'm looking forward to this chat. We're going to talk about some pretty interesting things today. Terms you don't typically hear associated with IT are bleeding edge, paving the path, driving change, and yet this is exactly what you guys are helping do within Avon Technology. And I'm excited to talk a little bit about what that looks like, and particularly what that looks like in the context of a regulated industry. So maybe you guys could get us started. Before we get into some of the initiatives that you've been driving and how you've approached this, maybe we can get started with just an overview on Avon Technologies. What do you guys build? Who are your customers?
So Avon Protection is, Avon Technologies is the group company. We have two business units within Avon Technologies, and we're a protection business. So we have Avon Protection that does respiratory products, so simply gas masks and related equipment. And then we have Team Wendy, which is a ballistic helmet manufacturer. So one of the vision statements we have is we do unparalleled protection for those who protect us.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool business. Honestly, we're making a difference. We're making sure that people come back home to their families. So with that comes quality. Quality is a non-negotiable in our business. So IT, where does that fit, right? It's always the question. Normally, I say we're the sidecar of an organization because we're in manufacturing. Is it exciting being part of IT? Well, it is now because we're changing that paradigm. We're getting closer to the business. We're understanding where the value is with our product, and we're also understanding where technology fits in that space. And that's where Tulip really came in to kind of help us realize more potential in the IT teams, bring more innovation, and also bring a bit more excitement in participating, being active participants of protecting people's lives.
And fun fact, I've interacted both on the supplier and on the customer side with their products. So I have a military background, but I hold the proud distinction of having been gassed, wearing your gas masks multiple times. And I can say, first of all, thank you for your commitment to quality. And second of all, they make a great product, as evidenced by the panel today. No, but in all seriousness, look, this is important stuff that you guys are making. It's mission critical. It's critical to preserving life. Let's talk a little bit about Avon Technologies before we get into the solution a little bit. You guys, let's set the business context. If you can give me an overview of the business journey that you guys have been on over the last 5 years. Because if we rewind a few years ago, things were getting a little rocky for a while. So maybe you could paint the backdrop. What's the context within which this transformation is taking place?
So you can look at the share price, and that tells a story. About 5 years ago, we were looking like we were doing very, very well, but it all turned around very badly, very quickly. And so three years ago, our share price plummeted, and the board decided that they needed to do something and act quickly. And they brought in a new CEO, Josh Slater. And so Josh Slater is very much an advocate of continuous improvement. And he has, over the last 3 years, through the application of continuous improvement across all the business units and sites, has really turned the organization around.
Yeah, and so it's interesting because things weren't going great from the business side of things for a while. And I think you could see it certainly in the financials and in the share price. But if you were to characterize this in the context of the operations, you're seeing inventory stacked on shelves. You're seeing slow turn time of that inventory, fairly inefficient processes. But it's interesting because you guys, we started our journey about this was I think July of 2022, before the new CEO, the Agenda for Change came in. So you guys were ahead of the curve even then, and that's when you started to standardize on the Tulip platform for some of these improvements. Can you talk a little bit about, when you made that decision, what were you thinking about? Like how were you seeing the world, and what was your vision for Tulip when we were getting started?
Yes, from where Amandio and I were sitting within the organisation, being in the IT department, not so close to the manufacturing floor, we could actually see that there was a big gap in the way that the business was basically tracing the products. Unsurprisingly, our customers demand that we keep clear traceability data for each product as we produce it. And so Amandio and I went out, found the right tool, but really hadn't got the impetus to start using that tool until we had NIOSH, didn't we? Which was
Yeah, and that's really where everything started. Our products need to be tested. They're very highly regulated. One of the products failed an NIOSH testing. And
can you give us context on what an NIOSH test is?
So that's one of the CBRN chemical, biological, radioactive, and nuclear testing done by the US DoD. It's one of the key standards for North America. This was one of our escape hoods that we're producing. And with our failure, when we talked with the business, it was the database failed. We stored the data, but we can't find it. So from an IT point of view, how do we approach this, right? Like SQL database, will that cut it? How do we interface with an end user? How are we going to trace so much data? And how do we make this process in a no-fault forward capacity, making sure that next time we don't lose data and we can have the assurance that the product is good? So this is when we started going to market and trying to find all the three-letter acronyms around, and we came across Tulip. And the beauty of it was it allowed us to bridge with the business, because we're no longer talking about drivers to connect to a machine and thinking about RS-232s, like the boresome things that often IT perceive as a risk in an organization. And because we can't control, we don't know where they come from, what they're doing. So Tulip helped us bridge that gap in simplifying the way we interfaced with those users. So he allowed us to learn a new language, right? So by being part of this journey, and then with Joss coming along and really emphasizing the need for a continuous improvement with the adoption of the strengthened system, we started to build a common language across the organization.
And you mentioned the strengthened systems, and you guys published an ebook on this, I think, the Strengthened Systems Initiative. Can you talk to us a little bit around what is this Strengthened Systems Initiative? What is this, and what was driving this?
Yeah, so I mentioned that Joss joined early 2023, and he set about really right from the start using continuous improvement to change the whole manufacturing process. You mentioned inventory. Yeah, we had stock everywhere, and my boss, the CFO, for him, he just sees money just sat there not doing anything. So Joss set about by basically taking the whole organization on a journey. It started off with Kaizen, started off with looking at each and every process, and I think very incremental over the first couple of years, really just to introduce it as a concept, going from batch to flow, but then the cultural side of it needed to really pick up, and that's where the strengthened system came in. So Joss has worked very closely with Art Byrne, who I think many people know as a forerunner in lean and manufacturing for the US. And so he then took that and made a cultural change from an organization perspective. We now, everybody in the organization has sat down and gone through what we call the strengthen training. There's an ebook. Anybody can download the ebook. And it's very much a book that you, as an operator, as a material handler, as an IT person, can get to the same level of understanding of what we're doing, why we're doing it, and the strength of what needs to be done.
Yeah, so there's this cultural alignment moment. Jost comes in, new CEO comes in. You've already standardized on the Tulip platform here, and the new CEO comes in, real continuous improvement mindset. Daniel, we were on a call. I don't know. I'm fast forwarding a bit here. But we were on a call a few months ago, I think, and you were telling me, I think the CEO had just participated in a Kaizen event at one of the sites and stuck his head in your office earlier that day and said, hey, we just finished the Kaizen event. We're going to take this line, we're going to put it over there, this is coming over here, we're moving everything around, the flow's going to change. Are you good from an IT perspective? And you said, well, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
That's a fairly, can you talk to me a little bit around continuous improvement in the context of an IT strategy? This is a non-starter when you think about historically how these systems are implemented. They're relatively fragile, they're relatively cumbersome, and yet you've got this responsiveness built into the way that you operate at this point. Can you talk to me a little bit about how that came to be?
Yeah, it's been a process that we've evolved in. I mean, we heard from other speakers earlier about the very much a similar cultural journey that they've gone on. But for us, IT, we like to have the requirements given to us. We like to sit down. We like to do develop the system. We like to go through testing. We like to then deliver to the business. And that is very much, a lot of IT people. That's the way that they operate. With Tulip, we've had to learn as an IT team that when you get a team working together with the same culture, with the same outlook, but with also the same discipline. And I think that's the key, is we are working now very closely with the operations teams, with the quality teams. And when we make these changes, and Amandio makes lots of changes quite regularly, they are not done in isolation. It's not the IT team delivering to the business. It's the team delivering. Obviously, traceability is key for us as a supplier to the DoD. Each of our products has no value unless we can provide the finished product with all the data to show that we followed the right plan and the right quality. So we've actually been able to benefit from the cultural side of it. Mm-hmm. The fact that we work together as a team. Amandio's got great examples.
And we talked about the evolution, right? We had 2 years head start, right? We had Tulip. We got to learn how to do this with a business. So that kind of allowed us a degree of learning, a degree of getting close proximity with the business, and starting to align in how fast manufacturing moves. IT, we don't often move as fast. When you're in a service providing capability, we have change management processes, we have ticketing systems, all of these kind of things that have SLAs attached to them, all of that. But then it comes the moment where we have to do something, right? And in manufacturing, often it's about being effective. It's not about being efficient, right? If something breaks, you need people to be there to be able to react. So we kind of started learning about how do we get closer to these guys on the shop floor. Our journey with Tulip was quite unusual. We're told typically OT comes to you guys. In our case, it was IT that came to Tulip because we saw a different way of bringing that bottom-up approach with the business. We tried to incite a need for change, right? And that's where everything kind of started. That bottom-up, we kind of allowed people to be motivated about of what the capabilities are. And then with JOS, this is where the culture came in, and now we're kind of meeting in the middle. We have a direction from the CEO and the executive leadership. So that's really been our tailwind in driving that change.
But let's get practical for a moment, because you're talking about the team. You're in a regulated industry, but how did you bring the team together? So the team, you've got the business, you've got operations, you've got IT, you've got quality. Can you walk us through, certainly this was a journey, can you walk us through some of the key defining moments that took place to get to this state where you're in now, where continuous improvement is just part of how you operate?
I think, there's along the journey, there's been a lot of defining moments. I think one of the biggest ones was in the strategy perspective, we're looking to consolidate our footprint from a manufacturing. So we were looking to close one site and move that manufacturing to another site. And we could quite easily have just lifted the old MES platform and put it into the new site. But we took that as an opportunity. It was an opportunity to take out some legacy. And the first iteration of it really was another batch process, but developed on Tulip. And it took the IT team, who had a lot of legacy understanding of the batch process, to develop those apps, to put those apps in place. I mean, yeah, I can say, it was an 18-month project done in 6 months, and very much IT-led. But then the business got hold of it, the operations teams got hold of it, and they realized that actually to transform what was a transferred batch process to a flow process, we needed to change. And that's where, as an organization, Kaizen has just been incredible. It pulls all the right people together to make decisions, to make changes, but also to drive the overall strategy forward.
So there was this moment when you're shutting down production in one site, you're going to another site, you've got some infrastructure, you've got an MES in place. To move that to the other site would have been an 18-month journey, you're saying?
Yep.
And it would have, I think, what was you said there, you gave an estimation of cost, I think.
Yeah, it's about, we finger in the air, we thought it would be about 2 million.
About 2
if
million.
we had done the legacy way.
And you did it in a third of the time, 6
Yep.
months, and a fraction of the cost.
Yes.
And that was the moment when the business said, hey, wait a minute, maybe there's something to this. You guys are moving much faster.
Yep.
It's not an overpromise, underdeliver. It's an underpromise, overdeliver. Faster,
Yep.
lower cost. That was the moment when the business came and said, hey, let's talk more, and let's part. That was
Yep.
one of the defining moments.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's really hard, right? You're shifting a whole factory.
Yeah.
There's years of history of how things have been built, how they've been done, and now we're coming with this brand new tool, solving all the mysteries of manufacturing. It took a long time, right? It's not, the 6 months in elapsed time of trying to have a ton of discussions, because people will naturally default to their safe place. Like, why don't we use the old one? It's working. I know it's broken. We can fix it later. Well, that's just perpetuating a problem, right? And we can't keep doing that. So we took a risk as well, and we kind of stuck out. We saw the value in documenting, but also by doing this, it allowed us to kind of challenge the folklore, the things that we've done because, right? So now we can start from scratch, thinking about the process, thinking about the value add. How are we shifting product? How are we moving product? What is the value of collecting these bits of data? And from IT, it's good because we're familiar with data structures. So that allowed us a good playground to help other people understand the value of data and how do we get to a better end game.
Mm-hmm. And what are, maybe just for the folks in the audience, can you give us an overview of what are the core use cases that make up your deployment within Tulip? Do you have a handful of just key use cases that drive the majority of engagement?
I mean, we started with traceability. That's all it comes down to in our product. We often say that a helmet without data is the same value as a dropped helmet. The customer won't take a helmet if we're missing a single data point. And typically, a helmet will have circa 300 data points. Mm-hmm. That will be the constituent, the digital twin, we call it, in that helmet. We know exactly the what, where, who, what, at any given point, which then evolved into real-time analytical. We now know what's our SWIP or our WIP, and we can start asking questions. Why do we have so many helmets sat in X location? So these allow the business to start seeing the potential of the system and where that could take them. So from then, we started putting dashboards on the floor. Real-time dashboard metrics on how many helmets have we done and how many we should have done by now. Mm-hmm. So that kind of gives you a sense of the magic moment when people ask you, what if we did this, right? So now we're starting to expand into tool management, into integrating with our ERPs for work order management. We're also looking to dashboarding inventory from the ERP, right? So, we're not quite there yet with an nirvana state where everything kind of goes from work order in station one all the way to confirmation at the last station. But we're now it's allowing us to talk to the business about where are the value add opportunities.
But you're on this journey. So you started with core product genealogy, EDHR, traceability, capturing all of the critical to quality data points, and having that in a system that makes it accessible and allows you to release product faster. From there, you expand into basic production visibility. Are you winning? Are you losing by hour, by shift, by day, by week? And now you're starting to expand into some of these other adjacent use cases. Can we talk a little bit about, you had the old MES. How did it work before? So you've got, a batch of 2,000 helmets or something like that at the end of the line. What was the process to release these to the end customer? How did that work before?
So we always did a data review because that MES wasn't, fully robust. We couldn't guarantee that we had all the data at any given time. The machine integration component wasn't overly robust either. So we were batching. We were holding helmets for 2, 3, 4 weeks to make sure that we had enough time to do a data review to then get the DCMA coming in to do the inspection. We now moved from a 2, 3 week lead time into an hour, right? Because
3 weeks to an hour.
To an hour. It's an immense gain in productivity because we started thinking about what does the process mean towards a helmet. We started moving away from a machine focus or data focus, and we started thinking about what's the value of this helmet at this point in time, right? And what makes that process, what is the data that we require. So now we can, with great degree of quality and assurance, know that you only complete a process when you've finished. There's only one beginning and one end. It's no longer a spaghetti of making a helmet. We know exactly at process A, you do process A when we shifted, like we moved into a different location, into process B. So there's that acceptance. I always joke and say it's like when you put an order on Uber Eats or DoorDash, right? You don't ring the restaurant to ask whether they got your order, right? That's the kind of same trust we're building into the system.
So if the gas mask or if the helmet is in the process, you know that the process is being adhered to because you physically can't do the thing unless you're doing it within the context of the approved workflow.
Exactly.
Now, how does that work though? So we're starting to go down, or at least paint a path of a fairly, fairly well-controlled process, and yet you also have this thing we started the conversation with, this continuous improvement, yeah, where the process is controlled, it's locked down, you've got the full permission model, you can't do the thing unless the thing is approved, but you're also got a CEO who's participating in weekly Kaizen events and picking, lines up and moving them over here and changing process flow and all of this. Like, how do you balance the need for governance and data integrity and a full EDHR to release this product with an operation that's constantly evolving and changing the way that this work is done? I mean, how much of that is your team? How much of that happens at the site within operations? Who does this development and this iteration?
This is where IT was really, we were very mature in that governance process, right? We do change management. We understand what change means. We knew that we had to say no at some point, and that was the hardest thing. In Tulip, it's easy to go to a table and change a record, but that means that we're losing traceability. We're interfering with something. So it was really hard coming to the point that we had to think about what is the role of a developer in the concept of continuous improvement and developing apps and refining processes. So having that moment to say no was quite a shift of paradigm in we IT understand what governance means. We started to learn what governance means for the customer. So now we're talking about quality assurance and quality control aligned with governance in a system. So we didn't have to think about the system in databases and cybersecurity requirements. We knew all of those were already taken care of. We just had to think about how does someone interface with the technology, and what does that mean for the end result in a product.
But these Kaizen events happen sometimes now, and you guys aren't even a part of them. Yeah, you find out about them after the fact. So a lot of agency has been allocated to the operations and to the production sites. Can you talk a little bit about what changes can be made locally, what changes would would trigger an IT governance approval, and how you've empowered the sites?
I mean, it's basically guardrails. They have certain access to be able to do things on the apps, but in terms of access to the tables, to the traceability, they don't have the access to do it. But because we're there with them, if it needs that change, it can be done very, very quickly and in a controlled fashion.
I mean, we were talking a little bit, as we were preparing for this, and you shared the example of sometimes the operation wants to do something quickly, and they say, hey, this is the plan, we're in the Kaizen event, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. You say, got it. And the IT change is faster than going out and making the change on the shop floor. I don't know, what's that all about? How do you do that?
So I guess it comes down to the fact that the teams now are culturally very close. So we understand the data, we understand what the business is trying to do with the data. So we're part of the business. I guess that's the thing. The fact, so we can understand what they want to do. We can almost, in some respects, guide them as to the right outcome. We have lots of instances where out of a Kaizen they want to make a change or they want to do an app, and that can literally be done overnight. We can do it overnight, and we can affect the production floor on the next day.
Yeah. You were saying you were telling me about an example when there was a Kaizen event, and I don't know, maybe you can share it.
Yeah, that was another point. That's like another aha moment for the organisation and the adoption of Tulip was there was a Kaizen happening in one of the smaller sites, and there wasn't anybody from IT there. So we try to attend all the Kaizen that we can, and there was a process that they wanted to change. And one of the attenders of the Kaizen had done some Tulip app work, and literally, he took the output from the Kaizen one day, made the change, had it demonstrated, and it just happened that Josh, the CEO, was in that Kaizen, and it was just like the light bulb went off. It's almost like this is part of the tool now, one more tool that he's got from an organization perspective to make his vision happen.
Yeah, that's also the double-edged sword, right? Now we have a tool that the CEO knows it's very quick to deploy. So now we have to get faster. Or we need to go back to the drawer and start to help the business prioritize. How do we do stuff? And it's really interesting because it also unlocked things that we never knew we needed in terms of processes, new processes, things we never thought we would do, right? Like tooling. It's really easy to maintain a tool in a spreadsheet. Yeah. Now we can actually have an end-to-end process. So this started shifting that paradigm that it's not just an app, it's a process, it's aligned to a very measured outcome, which is amazing that we can now just roll out a bunch of new processes and monitor them. We can see the success of them. We can see how the cycle time is doing, right? We can see where the bottlenecks are in the organization or in a particular line. So all of these kind of helped us really get to a point where it's not just fast to deploy. It's giving us meaningful data that we can analyze and we can use in Kaizens to drive more continuous improvement.
Yeah. So you've got the team together, you've got quality, you've got IT, you've got the business. You're all one team, culturally aligned around the spirit of continuous improvement within the context of the operation. You've empowered the sites to make some of these changes directly with appropriate governance. You've unleashed the genie of the CEO knowing you have this superpower, and now you're keeping up. I mean, look, this is, I think, a pretty envious position to be in. I think you guys have accomplished quite a bit here. First of all, let's talk about the hard stuff, right? It always, when you zoom out and you look back, everything is like, we'll talk about business outcomes in a moment. because I think you guys have some really incredible results that are worth talking about. But you've accomplished so much in the last 2 years. I mean, what was the hardest? Everybody coming together saying, "Hey, one team, one fight. We're going to produce the best customer." Surely there were bumps along the way. What was like the hardest thing you had to overcome to get to this state?
I'll bring it back to the cultural side, because when you're shifting a culture in an organization, there's ups and downs, but there's also casualties. There are some people that really find it very difficult to work in the environment where they could have the CEO stood next to them, and asking them to make a change, and it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And there have been casualties. I think that's probably the hardest thing from being an IT leader, to see that some of the organization, it's like, this is the best thing, but then some of it, it's like, well, no, it's not. And we've had casualties.
Well, what's that tension look like though? So is this a function of transitioning from comfort zone? I'm going to get requirements, and I got about 1.5 years, maybe 2, and then I'll have to deliver something. But I can take my time. To need identified, solution deployed next day. I mean, is that the fundamental disconnect there? It's not for everybody.
It is not. It's not for everybody.
Yeah.
But I think that's part of the. I'll bring it back to the strengthened system. Part of the strengthened system, and actually the base of it, is to get rid of waste. Right. I mean, for probably many of the audience, the principles of lean, and sometimes that waste is human input or lack of human input. And unfortunately, as you go through that, you find the places where there is waste. And unfortunately, sometimes that's the way that people approach things, the way that they need time, they need the thing. And so it can be a little bit brutal, but that's part of getting an organization to be the best it can be.
Yeah, we heard a little bit about that in the keynote this morning, right? I don't know what Nathan called it, the corporate waste or something like that.
Yeah.
Like getting lots of expensive people in a room for many, many hours across many, many days, across many weeks, to identify what the requirements even should be. Meanwhile, you guys have gone out and said, problem solved, problem solved, problem solved. Yep. And it's a different paradigm. Let's talk about waste elimination in the context. You mentioned your inventory could sit there for weeks before it's released. Now it sits there for an hour. What about on the indirect labor side? How much time went into having to review these products before they're released to the end customer? It sounds like I don't want to put words in your mouth. You tell me.
We free people to do more value-add stuff now, because we don't have to go through reams of paper or try and create SQL queries to try and find a missing data point, or go through Historian and try to uncover, where a machine would have done part of that process. Because of this no-fault forward mindset, product-wise, we've unlocked people tremendously. Their day jobs are they're now finding themselves trying to find other things to keep themselves busy, because they don't know what they were doing before. This was pure waste from their eyes. They didn't know what good looked like. Mm-hmm. People were stressed trying to get these things done, because there's a deadline. The customer is coming on a Thursday. We need to work overtime trying to stitch up all of these pieces of information. Now they're free, right? Now they can do quality control on the line. They can do line inspections. We can start thinking about line clearance. We're now much more on top of what our scrap looks like, right? The non-conformances. We can dedicate a lot more time to fix other problems. So we now lowered our water level. We're finding other rocks, and now we're trying to navigate. And it's really cool, because it's allowing everyone in the organization to have a culture of experimentation, mm-hmm. right? Which is quite innovative. It's quite new. Everyone feels like we're in a startup. It's high impact, right? Everyone is adding value much more quickly, and people now have a new way of thinking, and they're open to just be more creative, which this cultural shift, it's still happening. It's not perfect. We stressed along the way, the computer is rebooting. Like, we still have a lot of that stuff that, we still have to demystify what is Tulip, right? Yeah. Now we have a really cool name associated with a product in a product line that's also associated with IT. Occasionally we get a call out, hey, Tulip is down. What do you mean Tulip is down? No, Tulip isn't down. That helmet didn't follow the process. So there we go, right? So we now are
made me nervous. Oh my God.
Exactly, but that's the kind of challenges that we've been through. Those were the things that we kind of had to start mapping out with the business.
But it's a key point because, hey, I can't do work because I know what to do on this helmet. But yes, you missed a key data point, which means anything you do from this point moving forward is wasted work. So don't busy yourself with this. It's irrelevant. You have to stop and fix this process and make sure that the process is being adhered to, because at the end of the day, if you end up with a batch full of perfectly good helmets, but you don't have an EDHR that can attest that the process was followed to the T for every single one of them, in the dump they go.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that's been actually. That's been key, right? That people can understand that they can stop the line. Mm. If it's not moving forward, you stop the line. And it's for flow manufacturing. It's a core principle that you do not pass on the fault. You do not continue to replicate the fault. You stop, and it has been freeing that the CEO is like, I don't want the line to run if there's a problem. Mm-hmm. I want it stopped, and I want to see the red light. I mean, Amandio's we work very closely with a consultancy from Japan, and we do trips to Japan, and they have music that plays. If the line stops, they have music that plays so that people know where to run to. Uh-huh. And we've not gone that far. But we've got lights, and we're.
Yeah, there's an anecdote. A few weeks back, we were trying to understand why is one press open, right? So we've made the challenge. Let's see if we can get the andon to flash if it's open for more than 10 minutes, because we want to know why something's going on. So we've made the change, right? We didn't communicate it too well, I'll say. So maintenance was running because all of a sudden there was a new color flashing on the press, and no one knew what that was. So that change management, should have been done better. We should have communicated that, but it served the purpose. It stopped the line. Everyone went to try and figure out, and we knew there was something that was stuck on the press, and we actually it was useful that they were there to help. But this is that new paradigm in how we get closer to aligning with our shift. That's really helping driving it.
So by taking, and you used the analogy of the water's gone down, you found the rocks, and for those who aren't familiar with lean, inventory hides process inefficiency because you just keep going and you put it here, and then inventory piles up, and you end up in the financial situation that that we talked about before. By taking that inventory down, you can really focus on process inefficiencies and then eliminate those inefficiencies. So let's talk about where we are now. We started this story with, things aren't going great. We need to do something different. What about today? I mean, if you look at before and after from a business perspective, how often are you turning over inventory today? I mean, what are you seeing in terms of quality? Can you walk us through what's the result been of some of this work?
Yeah, I think now we're close to 7 inventory turns.
What was it before?
0.6, 0.6 inventory turns a year.
So can you contextualize that? So what does that mean for a layman?
I mean, it takes us almost 1 year and 4 months to rotate inventory. It's quite a bit, yeah. Right? Where we have inventory sitting for a long time, yeah, in a shelf. It's money on a shelf. Like, it's the same with going to the supermarket and you leave your dollars there, and it's theirs. It's no longer in your pocket, yep, right? So we can't reinvest that money into the business, right?
So you've taken it from 0.6 to 7, so greater than 10x improvement?
Yeah.
And you've done this in 2 years?
2 years.
Yeah. And so that's frees up working capital,
Yep.
makes you far more efficient. That capital is now available to reinvest in the business. Meanwhile, there's not inventory on the shop floor hiding these process inefficiencies. You feel like a startup. I don't know. It's not a bad place to be. I don't know. I don't want to interrupt if you want to share more, but where to from here? What's next?
I think our target is 15 inventory turns a year
Yep.
for the business. So we still have a way to go, right? But that's the beauty of continuous improvement. You need to be ambitious. It can't be something that is attainable next week. We need to have something to aspire to and to put some effort and to feel that gradual steps are getting rewarded and we feel good for it,
Yeah.
right? If we said, oh, we've done 7, next year we want 8,
It's not inspiring.
we'd become more complacent again, right? So, but if you double that target, you knew the effort that was to get there. You know that's going to be another stretch. So you kind of motivate people to find problems, find opportunities, And in manufacturing, I'm sure everyone has a ton of opportunities in their businesses. So now is how do we convey that value and in bringing everyone together to feel like they can change, right? Some of the best moments we had in the organization was celebrating with the operators,
Yeah.
right? The first day that the board, we've met target at the end of the shift. And there's a visible, you have something saying you've done it.
And it's on a dashboard.
And
so
it's on a
everybody can see it.
dashboard.
It's not like 2 months later
Green.
you do the reconciliation on all the ledgers and you say, no, you can see, hey, we beat our target today.
Yeah, and everyone is cheering. You go and fist bump everyone is excited.
Yeah.
So the next day they come to work and they know they can do it,
Yeah.
right? So gradually you can help and it's the most rewarding feeling I've had. It's my first stint in manufacturing. I never thought it was going to be this exciting. Go to the Gemba, work with the folks, asking the operators, what do you think we can do best, right? They do it every day for 8 hours a day. So they
know where the problems are.
Yeah.
You ask them.
So they're helping us. We're bringing the operators into Tulip building forums because it's helping us be better. I think the first app we built, casting our mind back, we took the process and we mapped out. We did the app, cool. Got to the shop floor, did the first trial with the operator, and we're like, it's not going to work. Whilst I'm doing that, I need to do something else, right? It just completely blew our mind away. We didn't actually know what was the standard work. So we had to learn, and now this is where we're trying to align Tulip to our standard work combination sheets, all of these things, because it really helps us understand the value and the minute detail and the opportunities. And we can talk with operators. They know where their waste is. They try and be the most efficient that they can. So having them in the forum, man, it really helps. Making a button bigger, it's more ergonomic. I don't have to reach, knowing that it's only going to be 30 seconds that it's going to take. So we let them go through instead of asking them to click a button. So we're also looking at technology waste, the waste of motion for an operator. It's been really rewarding to, learn something that is so tangible. Like manufacturing is probably one of those things that gives you a good feeling that you go home and you made something.
Well, let me ask, and we're going to turn it over for questions to the audience here, but you mentioned, I'm just trying to, there's a lot of folks out there today who are thinking about, the MES that they want, or maybe I won't even say MES, but the solution they want to take on for EDHR, or some core MES capabilities, and they're right now thinking about how they want to draft their URS requirements, but that process is completely in tension with the way that you've just described working with the operation. Could you offer some commentary on, how you think about having requirements up front when you're thinking about picking a solution and this continuous transformation journey that you're on? How do you? Can you just share some perspective on this?
I mean, we've been looking at quadrants and 3-letter acronyms for a long time. When we look at a manufacturer, we try to encompass everything into a single black box. So, we did that, right? We probably ask your team, hey, how about this? How about flow? How about recipe? How do we do all of these things? You know, it turns out it's a Lego game, right? If you have all of these building blocks, you can grow it yourself. You can make your own business. And this is where your intellectual property, your processes, every manufacturing environment is unique. Yeah. We all make different products. We all make different stuff. Yeah. That's our DNA. So why just have something so out of the box that we're just going to configure, but we have no say in how that's going to behave, how that is taking into account our own process? Right? Like, it's really cool now that we can be Team Wendy, we can be Avon Protection, using a system that reacts and enacts what we want to achieve, rather than forcing us down a road or having to change our process or changing the language that we use. We can get closer to people by allowing them to have their own language, right? We all have these challenges in our factories. So, yeah. Have fun. Like, I think the technology is changing. The paradigm of technology is really changing.
So you just heard it. You just heard it from the IT department of a regulated industry that is frequently audited. How should you approach it? Just have fun with your IT implementation.
I mean, it's the paradigm is changing in technology.
Yeah, it is.
It's building blocks, you know. And the more we try to have like a monolithic system, it's getting harder for us as an IT to also interface with the business.
I love it.
So we had to adapt, right? We had to shake off those old clothes and now thinking about the future and how technology can help us enable the business by getting closer to them.
Look, I have so many more questions for you guys, but I know our audience may have some questions as well. So why don't we open it up? If anyone in the audience would like to ask a question, please go ahead.
When you move from 0.5 to 2, and then from 2 to 5, and 5 to 7. So what are the things that Tulip help you fix or unravel and go beyond?
And so for the question for folks who weren't able to hear that is, inventory turns went from 0.6 to 7 or 8 or 6. What did you uncover when you went from 0.6 to 2 and then from 2 to 7?
Oh, that's a good question. We don't have Tulip in every manufacturing floor, but what Tulip has helped us is understand how fast we're moving. So we're actively monitoring WIP and SWIP. We know how many helmets or masks are in between processes, so that is helping the daily management to be a lot more efficient. People are asking more questions, so the manufacturing team will probably give you more insight. We're not working with that delivery, but we're helping unlocking that data that can help people ask the question. And sometimes it's as simple as, why? Why do we have 20 sat in that shelf?
That was one of the steps. We moved a batch process to a batch process. But then Tulip enabled us to start changing that. And that's where we really started to free up the organization, because we did have racks of helmets that were being moved around. And once we saw that, it's all very visual. When you see WIP on the floor, my boss, CFO, that's the first thing he does is he walks around. Well, why is my money sat? Why have I got like piles of money sat there? And that was the key, was the fact that visually you can see. But then Tulip we were able to very quickly change from that batch process to a flow process. Now, the apps that we've started off aren't the same as the ones we finished with. So the app process has changed as well. We've gone from an IT team predominantly leading it now to the controls engineers, the process engineers who are doing it. A controls engineer who's used to programming a PLC, they love Tulip. Once they've had their eyes open to it, once they can see how easy they can take it on, they've pretty well much redeveloped all the more complex apps
Yep.
because they're like, well, yeah, IT, you're okay, but just give it to me and I'll do it.
Other questions? You guys are more than okay.
What in the culture at Avon? Oh, sorry. I guess I'm curious, like, what in the culture at Avon allows the IT team to like understand lean principles and be so involved in manufacturing? Like, I'm used to IT teams that are so specialized in IT and do their IT thing, while the business is like working around them. Like, what is it at Avon that pushes you in that direction?
I think you're right. IT people think about their IT processes and they think about their IT systems. Right? They don't I mean, they do think about the business process and how they can, but the culture now is all about breaking down the barriers between teams. And that's been the swinger, is the fact that every single team, we break down the barriers. It's not, we do this and we pass it to you. It's, we do this. And that's the swinger. And I mean, Amandio, I'll blow his trumpet for a bit. He's literally, I think he's just spent the last 2 months on the Gemba, literally on the floor, day in, day out. And that's the answer. And you know, there's the IT, and I've been in the industry for a few years. We very much like our process. We very much like to be able to just nicely define everything we're doing. And that's not how a manufacturing floor operates. Unless it's a very batch process.
Yeah, and it's curiosity, right? I think at the end of the day, with Kaizens and asking other people from the business to participate in a Kaizen started to allow people to be more curious. The beauty of a Kaizen is when you have people that don't know anything about that process, they come in and they start asking questions. They start to feel rewarded, right? They now have, they feel like they have a voice. Right? Why do we do, why do I used to move this from here to there? No one knows. So now you start to get a sense of ownership. And the IT team is feeling like they are learning about the business as well, right? Everyone, like, we all walk through the factory. We all look at something in a machine. Why does it behave like that? So now you can ask that question. And there's a forum, there's an open forum during Kaizens that allow that creativity to come out.
And I think that, there is one other thing, and a lot of credit has got to go to our CEO. There is no repercussions for making mistakes. And that goes for the whole organization. You try something, you fail, you try something else. It's not you try something, you fail. Well, let's find out why you failed. And there is, and that culture. Yeah, a lot of organizations, IT pulls back because they deliver something, it doesn't work, and then all fingers and are pointing at it. And so that again is something that's allowed us to expand and to be part of the journey.
We've got time for maybe 2 more questions, 1 or 2 more questions. Over here at the end.
How do you guys deal with operator compliance and training on the release of new versions of applications on the floor? Because buy-in is one thing, but then ensuring that they're actually reading and receiving the updates and not clicking the same button every day that they always do and they miss important changes.
So we learned that we have to train from first shift. You can't just do a change on second shift and expect someone at 5 o'clock to magically read the previous shift's mind of what changed. So we learned that very quick, that it needs to be governed. We also have a configuration management team that regulates a lot of that. We can't just go and change a work instruction. We have to get approval for them. We have to train operators. We need to keep a training record. So we haven't changed the process. We just had to adapt and work with the constraints. So quality is one of the approval of Tulip apps. because we want to make sure that it's not just a technology change, it's not just a process change. There is a configuration and a training that needs to be taken into account.
But to the point, it's the fact that it's one team. And so the quality team know the change that's taking place. The control team know the change is taking place. We're not passing the ball between each. It's done together. The changes are done together.
Okay, guys, got about 5 minutes left. Any other questions from the audience? Okay. Well, I think it's interesting. I'll just observe. It's interesting because, we're up here talking about the team coming together, and I had been thinking about this largely from the perspective of you bringing operations and you bringing quality in. But what I'm realizing through the course of the discussion is that you, IT, moved into operations as much as operations moved into IT, and that's pretty cool. So, look, guys, I appreciate. First of all, it's been just phenomenal working with you over these last couple of years, and I really appreciate you coming out here to share your story. I think what you guys are doing is really special, and I hope that it's been helpful for folks to hear this account of how you can actually embrace continuous improvement for real, the cultural implications and transitions associated with that in the context of a regulated environment is really tremendous. So bravo to you both for the impact that you're driving. Congratulations on the business results that you've achieved, and thank you again for taking the time to come and share your story with us. So.
Thank you.